This is not my cause, but orders I won't defy. Oh, my blue-eyed one, please don't ask me why.
We've come to Acomb this morning to look at the memorial here, and in our project we've had people from the community looking at and researching the memorials in their backyard, and we're very lucky that in Acomb we have Dr. David Petts, who's an archaeologist. So what have you made of your monument?
It's really interesting. We're sitting here on what looks like a nice traditional English village green in Acomb. But when I've been doing a bit of research about it, what's clear is actually we tend to think of village greens as being at the heart of a settlement. But Acomb, which was a separate village until the middle of the end of the 19th century, the main centre of Acomb was behind us, that way. And the houses were laid out along the main streets. And what we've got here is actually all that's left of the original common for Acomb. In the medieval period, villages had open fields around them, but they also had an area of common land on which people could graze their cattle and use for all sorts of resources. And when the open fields were got rid of in the mid-18th century, this triangle of land was put down for use for the local people for particularly grazing cattle, and they were able to dig sand. And that's why actually behind us, it's a bit difficult to see because it's hidden in the shrubbery, there's a big dip, and that's where the locals of Acomb would dig sand, use it in building, put it on roads, take it into the centre of York for roads. So we've got an area which originated as really an industrial or agricultural area, and it's only in the middle of the 19th century that we start to get this village green being turned into what it is now, a nice kind of picturesque area, park area. That really started happening once people started building houses, and particularly these houses behind us, new Victorian houses for the middle class. They start being put up along here, and it stops being used for digging sand. It gets put down to grass. It becomes quite an attractive focal point. And even before the War Memorial was erected in 1922, this little area where we are now, we've got some early photographs which quite clearly show it was planted out and made into almost a tiny miniature park. So it's on the kind of main road in and out of Acomb, go on the way into York. So not only people coming in and out of Acomb would have seen the War Memorial, but also people going in and out of York and between York and Wetherby. So it's on quite a focal place, and you can hear the traffic now as people go up towards the ring road from the city centre.
So there's quite a bit of decision making must go on with putting up these memorials.
Yeah, they have to decide where they want to do it. They have to get permission from whoever looked after the land. Because this is common land, presumably it was just up to the parish council to give permission. But in other cases, they might need permission from a landowner or somebody to donate the land. They've got to decide what design they want. They've got to work out how they're going to fund it. They've got to work out who's going to go on it. Because obviously not everybody goes on, not everybody wants to be recorded. Yeah. There's a whole series of decisions all the way through. Who's going to be involved in the ceremony when it's dedicated, who's going to look after it, who's going to maintain it. So I think the important thing about memorials is the erection of a memorial is just one part of quite a complex process. There's all the things which influence the site before it's erected. There's all the things which go on after the memorial's erected. And the fact that we can still stand here 100 years afterwards and it's still being looked after, it's still being used, it's still being maintained. These are long-lived things. These aren't just one-off events. These are things which have an afterlife.
So part of that decision-making process, we know from some of the sites we've looked at that we've had argument, we've had conflict about where they will locate the monument. But actually, I think Acomb seemed to have done quite a good job of trying to please everybody.
Yes, we know from the reports of the newspapers about when it was dedicated that the dedication ceremony clearly involved people from all elements of the local community. So it's not just people connected to the church, but also the various Methodist chapels, the Quakers, and as well as religious bodies, things like friendly societies, which were kind of insurance companies for the working class. They were involved as well. The army were involved, the local regiment provided a band. So the ceremony which dedicated the monument, which kind of set it all up, that involved people from across the community, and it was very clearly trying to draw people together as a kind of common unit. We're actually in reality there's always different churches, different friendly societies, working men's clubs. There's actually lots of different groups, but they're all pulling together for the war memorial.
Maybe we should just take a moment to think about some of the symbols and things that are on the memorial. We've looked at that in some of the other cases. It would be quite interesting to see what we've got here.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious thing is we've got a big cross, and that's in some ways it's kind of mirroring the idea of a traditional English village green cross. Obviously, we're on a green; it's now got its cross. Crosses weren't used on gravestones really until the early 20th century, so in some senses it's quite a novel shape. If you go back and look at Victorian cemeteries, the graves are all quite kind of flat-headed or gentle curves. It's only in the kind of particularly 1920s that we start seeing the use of crosses on individual gravestones. But obviously with a cross, with that attempt to look medieval, it's kind of harking back to a world of chivalry, a world which in many ways World War I destroyed. But it's still trying to make those connections. And it's not just in the big cross itself. We've got little shields, coats of arms. And these aren't clearly particular coats of arms. They're very simple, very generic. And round the other side, there's some simple symbols on the shields indicating the Navy, the RAF, and the Army. So they're kind of drawing on those kind of very general symbols. And there's nothing too specific that's going to upset anybody or link a particular group to this monument. It's all kept very kind of, in some ways, vague.
Yes.
So everyone can put what they want. Everyone can think about it in their own way.
We talked about time depth, and that's really interesting, the way that you can see the landscape in which this monument is set coming through time from the past. But of course it continues to the present day as well, doesn't it, David, around here in this little bit of landscape?
Yes, I mean, obviously the memorial was originally put up for people in the First World War, but like a lot of war memorials in England, there's an additional plaque for people who died in the Second World War, so that's another stage of use. And then, although not on the monument, just nearby, we've got a very small, what looks like quite a personal monument to somebody who died in the Falklands. And so that shows that this little green, not just the monument, this whole little area has become a point of commemoration for individuals. But of course, every year, just about this time of year, we have people coming back to the monuments and putting the poppies and the wreaths and the things we can see behind us. What's interesting is if you look at the names on those poppies and on those little crosses, some of those names aren't recorded on the war memorial. So they're not people who have a particular connection to people who are commemorated on the main monument, but they're clearly people who live in Acomb who, for them, this is the nearest and most appropriate place to remember their dead. So it's being reused again and again. So over 100 years we've got First World War, Second World War, Falklands, and then this annual reuse, revisiting of the site. So these are living monuments, and they keep on going. They're not just one-off markers.